Good day and welcome to Open Studio on Cape Town TV. My name is Tabitha and we are joined today by Rod Bloom from the Rowan Bloom Foundation and Dr. Michelle Mehring from Pete'spel. Welcome to the both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So Rod, your son Rowan, he lost his battle to cancer a couple of years ago. From looking at your website, reading up, watching the video, he seemed like a very courageous young man. Could you tell us more about him?
Yes, first of all, thanks for having us. Rowan was an amazing boy. He had a zest for life. He loved being around people, and he was a kid that always had a lot of belief in himself. He loved being out on the sports field. He was just like a normal, 13-year-old boy who had, was just about to enter into his teens, and the world was his oyster. So obviously when we got the news that he had been diagnosed with cancer, it came as a big shock to myself and my family. Absolutely.
And tell me, one day he discovered a pain in his rib, is it?
Correct.
What was that pain? How did that occur?
Well, Rowan, as I mentioned to you, he was an incredible sportsman, and one of his favorite sports was cricket. And he was a bowler, and one day he was busy bowling, and he just felt this pain in his lower back. And we actually thought it was he pulled a muscle, from bowling, and that's what we thought it was. We thought it was a sports injury, and we treated it for about 6 months with physio and rest and all that. And the pain didn't seem to go away, and that's when we decided to take it further and go and see a doctor, and then our worst nightmare became a reality.
And what was he going through at that stage? Once he had felt that pain through the days following that?
The pain would be, it wouldn't be continuous pain, but every time he would play cricket, he would feel the pain. But we just thought he wasn't getting enough rest. But we weren't that concerned. You always hear about pains here and then. You can't be a neurotic parent and worry about every pain your child gets. So so we just that's how we treated it, and then obviously the pain got worse and worse, and that's when we decided to go and see a doctor about it.
Okay, and then what did the doctor tell you? He diagnosed him with a type of cancer, which was?
After the tests, they found that there was a lesion on his 12th rib, which is the floating rib. And when they did the biopsy, they found out that he had a Ewing sarcoma, which is a rare type of bone cancer that they do find in teens.
Oh, okay. All right. Michelle, do you have more info on that?
So as Rod says, it's actually quite a rare tumour, and there's a very common presentation to think that it's a sports injury. And it's certainly not on the top of the list of any doctor when somebody comes to you with a pulled muscle. Very commonly between the ages of 10 and 20. Interestingly, usually presents in the long bones and in the pelvis, so a very uncommon place that it presented in his rib. And often because the diagnosis is delayed, by the time patients come to medical attention, the disease is often spread way beyond just the primary. And it's quite a difficult tumor to treat. It requires quite a lot of intensive chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and also surgery. Sadly, some children also have to have amputations.
So what are the symptoms?
Well, the symptoms are often a non-specific pain, and usually presents in the leg as a kind of a bone pain, but can also present as like what you would think is just a plain old musculoskeletal pain. And until you actually investigate further, some patients go to numerous doctors before somebody actually thinks to go and do an X-ray or something more intense. And they'll get the treatment with physio and a bit of painkillers and, kind of wait it out, and it's rare. So, it's
So is this something that happens genetically, or does it just occur in, like you say, Rod, in teens only, from a certain age to a certain age?
Nobody really knows what causes this particular kind of cancer. There's definitely a genetic association. There's certain mutations that we know about. We do see it sometimes in children that have had other cancers or second cancer, but it's actually a very rare tumor.
Okay, and the discovery of his kidney, I think I read a bit up on that, where you found out he only had one kidney. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
From birth?
Absolutely. Well,
Okay.
what happens when we obviously, took it further and he went for a scan to see what was going on down in that area, they discovered that he only had one kidney. And and they thought it was actually a kidney infection. And, we were horrified just at that finding. But yeah, unfortunately, I think that having that one kidney played a role in delaying certain parts of his treatment later on when it came to radiation. So because the remaining kidney that he had was actually embedded right next to, very close to his 12th rib. So when it came to radiation, they basically had to do what you call an auto transplant, which was to reposition his kidney into his pelvis. Yeah. So when he had the radiation, it wouldn't affect his only kidney. So it did cause a lot of anguish and complications.
Wow. Michelle, do you want to add to that? Just a little?
Yeah, well, I mean, the key thing about cancer is to start treatment as soon as possible. But obviously, if you have to go through surgery to move your kidney, it's going to delay the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, cancer we usually see as it's not very nice for the patient as such. But what about the family members, friends, that this cancer takes a toll on? I mean, you are dealing with that issue, aren't you?
Well, just from my experience, I mean, it affects the whole family, because your life is turned upside down. Life isn't normal anymore. Rohan had to go through chemo on every 2 weeks. He had to go to Red Cross Children's Hospital. So it's about dealing with the other two children. I'm very fortunate enough to have a beautiful son of 11 years old and a daughter of 9 years old. And we just had to try and make life as normal as possible for them in a very abnormal situation. So, it was very, very challenging. And, that's why I'm sure Michelle can add, as far as the Peterborough is concerned, is what they do now to assist with families, which is quite incredible.
Absolutely. And Michelle, I'm sure you're on this journey with Rod during this whole sort of stage, but we'll dig into that a bit later. Thank you very much. We're off to a quick ad break. Be back after these. Welcome back to Open Studio. We are talking about the Rohan Bloom Foundation. So Rod and Michelle, tell us about Rohan and what a hero he was.
Rohan was always my hero. I think I might have mentioned he had such belief in himself, and he was respected by his peers because of how he approached life. Nothing was too hard for me. He actually set a very, very high bar for himself. And when he took ill, he fought a courageous battle. He never got down on himself. It was really difficult for him. Having a needle phobia as well, it made life a lot more difficult. But he still went out. He went out with his mates. He still wanted to go on dates. He still wanted to play sport. And we let him do it, when he was able to, when he was strong enough. But he just always made me proud, and I was a big supporter of him. And as I said, he believed that he could do everything. And to be honest with you, when the chips were really down towards the end, I actually really believed that he was going to get through it. I just thought that if anyone's going to beat this, it's going to be Rohan. But unfortunately, this cancer is what it is, and he lost the battle. But yeah, he continues to be my hero, even though he's not with me in person. And it's about keeping his legacy alive. And people people remember Rohan, and through the Rohan Bloom Foundation, they will continue to remember him, and he still makes me proud.
And Michelle, your relationship with Rohan?
So I first met Rohan while I was in the oncology ward at Red Cross Children's Hospital, before we kind of knew that he was heading down the more terminal pathway. So I was called in by the oncologist to assist with his pain control, because unfortunately pain in Ewing sarcoma is often very severe and quite difficult to manage. So I remember the first day I met him in the ward, he was on his games, as any teenage boy would be, and you kind of have to distract him from it so you can actually do the consultation. And as Rod said, very much an ambitious boy, larger than life, knew what he wanted, knew what he didn't want as well, and made that very explicit. And so it's always such a difficult journey with a teenager. They're kind of at the prime where they are becoming young adults. And to be cut down with a life-threatening disease at that time in your life is just so cruel, really devastating.
So Rod, tell us about the Rohan Bloom Foundation. How did it start? Well, we kind of know how it started, but what projects do you do? What is unique about this foundation? What do we need to know about it?
Oh, what we first need to know is that there's no specialized children's hospice in Cape Town.
Right.
That's the first thing. Currently, there are children that are either passing away at home or they're passing away in hospitals such as Red Cross. Most children come from previous disadvantaged backgrounds. They don't have the comforts, they don't have the care, they don't have the support, and it makes life a lot more difficult for them and their whole family. So the fund, I just thought that we need to do something about it, and obviously having had close contact with Michelle, Michelle has been telling me that over the years she's been trying to establish this type of facility, but with great difficulty, because there hasn't been there's no funding for, unfortunately, for a lot of palliative care, especially in children. And so we formed the foundation, and the goal of the foundation is to establish this facility, and in partnership with PEDSPEL, and just create that environment where families can be held in during the terminal times. The parents, the siblings. I mean, I remember when my kids, when they wanted to go and visit Rohan and they weren't allowed in the wards, they would have to stand outside and look at him through the window.
Oh, really?
So that's the goal. The foundation is there to work with PEDSPEL in establishing this facility, and I'm very proud to say that we quite a way down the line we've acquired the property, and now we need to start raising funds to build the facility, to renovate, and from an operational point of view, to keep this going, because as I said, there's no government funding.
Yeah.
So that's where we are as a foundation. We've already named the house. We've called it Rohan House.
Fantastic.
And very proud of that as well.
Yes.
And hopefully this will just be part of Rohan's legacy.
Absolutely. And Michelle, tell us a bit about PEDSPEL.
So PEDSPEL, the name is actually a play on word. Okay. So PEDS means children, pediatrics, and PAL means friend, but it's also the shortened form of the word palliative care. So PEDSPEL is an organization that provides multidisciplinary palliative care to patients and their families with life-threatening illnesses. So as you will appreciate, when you have a life-threatening illness, it's not just about the medical stuff and the physical issues. There's a whole family behind the patient. So the kind of people that I have on my team are not just doctors. Yes, we have doctors, we have nurses, but we also have social workers, we have counselors, and we have play therapists to help with the siblings that are also affected by this disease, which in the end is actually a family disease. It's a family tragedy. family that we have to deal with. We not only have to get the patient through it, but we also have to get an intact family through it. So there's a lot of psychosocial support that also needs to be provided. Plus, we also need to be able to provide services wherever the patient is. And patients will move between home and hospitals, between the public sector and the private sector. And that certainly was my experience with Rohan, that we tried to look after him in a number of places. But because a lot of places, particularly hospitals, are not really set up to manage the whole family, Rod was talking about the children having to look through the windows. And we have to do that because we need to practice proper infection control. But it's really difficult for young brothers and sisters to understand why that is happening to them. And often with a focus on the ill child, the siblings are the ones who get left behind. So there's a lot of other work that needs to be done. And wherever we went, we actually struggled because a lot of nurses are not necessarily controlled in pain control and how to manage dying. We trained to support life and to save lives. So it's really a whole change of process to support a terminally ill child and their family.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. We're off to a quick ad break. Be back after these. Welcome back to Open Studio on Cape Town TV. We're talking about the Rohan Bloom Foundation. So Michelle, how did you meet Rod and his family, and tell us a bit about that journey?
So as mentioned, I first met Rohan in the hospital at Red Cross in G1, and sadly Rohan's tumor went to his back. So he became paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down, and he was looked after at home. So I also did a few home visits together with my family counsellor. And I think in the home and in the private hospitals is kind of where I got to know the family a little bit better. I'll never forget my very first home visit. So one of the other things Rohan did was he kept snakes in his room. So Rod said to me, the snake has left the terrarium a few weeks ago. We're not quite sure where it is, but it's perfectly safe to go in. So I thought, oh, okay. And like watching my feet the whole time while I was busy doing that examination.
The big escape artist snakes.
Yes,
Much as you think they...
Yeah, I'm not a fan of them.
No. And I think you found it in the neighbour's house about 3 houses down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, about 2 months later.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so this journey you went on with this family, obviously you were very, very supportive, providing the information, everything that I'm sure their family required.
Our team also works in conjunction with the primary treating team, so the oncologists were very much involved, and often we would have joint conversations. So it would be on the oncologist, the parents, as well as the palliative care team. We never make decisions on our own. We always make decisions as a collective body. And also, in this case, Rohan needed to be part of that decision-making process as well.
Yes,
His thoughts
exactly.
and ideas were also very important, and he certainly knew what he wanted and where he wanted to be.
Yes.
And we really had actually hoped that he would be at home as much as possible, but unfortunately the complications around his being paralyzed and his pain were quite tricky to manage in the home environment, and he needed to come into the hospital towards the end of his journey. So we basically ended up at the Vincent Pallotti Hospital. And quite a rough road there as well. And you know, private hospitals are slightly maybe better than public hospitals, but they still have the same constraints, and they don't have facilities for parents. I remember Rod and his family camped out in the kind of couch lounge area in the waiting room, at Vincent Pallotti Hospital, kind of day after day, And as Rod was saying, you never think it's going to happen until it actually
Until it happens
does.
to you,
Yeah. And it affects the nurses as well,
And you can't prepare for anything like that.
No,
It's
you
impossible.
can't. You can't.
Yeah.
And one thing I can say about Michelle is that when I first met her, she made herself so available to us. Right away, she started a WhatsApp group.
Yes.
And she was available 24/7, which was absolutely unbelievable. And I think Michelle and her team made our journey a lot easier. And
Absolutely.
as Michelle mentioned, when Rohan became a paraplegic, that became even more challenging for us. But it was just part of his whole journey.
Yes.
But you're 100% correct. When it does happen, you actually can't believe it's happening to you, but you get a wake-up call very, very quickly.
Yeah. So tell us about your fundraising now. You're joining forces, and tell us about what you're going to do with this raising funds. How are you going to do it?
From the foundation side, we've had quite a few fundraising events
Already.
Okay. Last year, where we raised some nice funds, and we continue by people taking part in sporting events. We've had the double century cycle tour, which took place a few months ago. We had 2 Rowan Bloom Foundation teams, and that's more from creating awareness. So just over the past few years, people have come to us and have said to us, we want to swim to Robben Island and back, and we want to do it for the foundation. And so all these small little kind gestures from people have brought in funds into the foundation. People have birthdays and say, well, please donate money to the Rowan Bloom Foundation. So we're really getting the word out there. People are very familiar with the foundation and what we're trying to do and why it is so necessary. And I think, the whole thing is to get the story out, because I don't believe people know what's going on out there with regards to terminal children and the suffering that they're going through and the lack of facilities and the lack of help. So together with PEDSPEL, that's what we're trying to do. We want to try and raise the awareness, and once we raise the awareness, the funding should start coming in as well. But we do have events that we're planning for this year as well, and we need to keep on doing it. It's an ongoing thing. It's ongoing. So I get a lot of pleasure. I won't say pleasure, but it really gives me a lot of strength to do that, and purpose in life to do this kind of work now. And it's crazy. I don't think I ever would have found myself imagined myself in this position a good few years ago before Rowan took ill.
Yeah.
But under the circumstances, I'm very passionate about it.
And this is what's happening now.
Exactly.
Michelle, how else can the public or the community get more involved?
So there's actually a lot of opportunities for volunteers once the hospice is up and running. But even before we get there, as Rod was saying, they say it takes a village to look after a child. I think it takes a city to look after a really ill child. It's expensive, we need 24/7 nursing care. There's a lot of specialized equipment that we need. We also sadly have a lot of kids whose parents can't journey with them. We've recently had kids whose parents are up country, and can't be with them. So one of the other programs that we're busy developing at PEDSPEL is to get a bank of really strong volunteers who can be there, can kind of be the surrogate parent for the child in hospital or the child in hospice.
So what sort of things would those volunteers be doing specifically?
Just to kind of be with them, kind of bring them a little snack, read them a story, that kind of thing. Be there to hold their hand when they're getting a drip done, the kind of stuff that a parent would do, but if a parent is not in that position to do that, there's a gap.
Okay, I see. Could you please briefly tell us Rod's contact details, and Michelle, your contact details for the public, Facebook pages, whatever it is?
Absolutely. Well, we do have a Facebook page which is very active. It's the Rowan Bloom Foundation Facebook page. You can also get hold of us through the website, www.rowanbloomfoundation.org, and it has all the contact details there.
Michelle?
So our website is www.peedspel.org.za, and we also have a Facebook page.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being on the show. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of this show. Thank you to our guests for sharing with us. Thank you to the viewers for watching. From me, Tabitha, it's goodbye.